The topic today, alternative to closing a computer club. And as I'll explain, this is something that we faced in the community that I live and work. And but a little bit, background. Let's see if I can. Whoops. Here we go. So they're basically, as APCUG looks at the clubs that are members, we look at two types. There's the ones that are in the retirement communities. When I say retirement community, I'm talking about Sun City and a host of other association organizations, and they are able to provide the computer state-of-the-art training facilities because they get that based on association dues and often membership dues in that club. John mentioned I was the former Region 9 advisor, so I got a chance to travel to places like Arizona, of course, where I live, Nevada, and Colorado. I spent almost a week in Colorado visiting all the clubs there, and I got a chance firsthand to see these communities that boast multiple rooms, not one room, multiple rooms filled with computers running Windows, Apple products, Linux operating systems, and along with some of the most popular software programs. Classes are held daily for beginners as well as more advanced sessions covering the Microsoft Office programs, whether it be Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And they have a large base of residents, and when I say large, we're talking about usually thousands of homes and more. And there's always individuals willing to step up to facilitate the club operations. And these clubs typically flourish and continually look for ways to utilize the variety of benefits offered by their APCUG membership. The other type of club I refer to as community-based. And these are and this is what the Payson Club is, in small towns or big towns and cities across the nation. They get their membership from local residents who have an interest in technology. And at least speaking on behalf of the Payson Club, we have some beginners as well as individuals that have a lot more experience. And they hope to get a learning experience. And the biggest challenge is to stay current with today's constantly changing technologies. The meetings are held in libraries and other public-oriented conference rooms, but often the best you can hope for from an equipment point of view is maybe an internet connection, slow, and some tables and chairs. Does that sound familiar to some of you folks out there? I bet it does. And typically, if you want to retain your membership, the annual dues have to be minimal. And you'll find usually a couple of people in the club who are willing to give presentations. And what we did in Payson, often I would contact vendors in the community to come in, folks from maybe Verizon Wireless or one of the computer stores that works with fixing computers and do presentations for our group on any topic that was of mutual interest. APCUG membership here is really important to these clubs since they tend to utilize the benefits provided, such as the Speakers Bureau, the push newsletters, articles, and probably most important, what we're doing here today with the virtual technology conferences. But with each passing year, these clubs are finding it more difficult to continue for reasons we'll now consider. So I'm going to use the Payson Club, obviously, which I'm most familiar with. We're located, if you took a map of the state of Arizona and put your finger right in the center, that's where Payson is. And if you're familiar with this state, we're halfway between Phoenix to the south and Flagstaff to the north. The elevation here is 5,000 feet. We're called often an active mountain town. 4-mile seasons, not nearly the heat that Phoenix gets, and about 15,000 folks call this home, most of which are people who are retired. So the Payson Club was started in 1994, and to give you a comparison, that's when Windows 3.1 was the operating system of choice. 1994 isn't all that old when you could talk about other clubs that have been members of APCUG going back to the 80s. Our dues were $15 per year per family, We wanted to encourage broader participation. So if one was a member, that we encouraged them to bring the spouse. And we had 2 monthly meetings: a general meeting at the Payson Library, where there's a conference room that we have use of, and a formal presentation was done either by a club officer or, as I said before, outside vendors. And then this meeting used to be difficult for me to complete, in a way that I would always be bombarded by the members with questions at the very beginning when I was trying to set up the equipment, or at the very end when I was trying to go home. So we started in the last couple of years having a second, which we called a technical meeting. And that was at a member's home, where we could discuss computer trends and things that were going on in the industry. And there was no fear of not being able to get out on time. It was much more a comfortable area. All right, so the recent history of the Payson Area Computer Association. For the last several years, we've had about 30 members, both men and women, but almost all over the age of 60 and good number over 70. Attendance at the last several meetings in 2016 had been going down to where, not counting the offices, there was only about 10 non-offices present. And as I said, that was a continuing trend. While I long encouraged members to bring friends and family as the best way to me to get to know about an organization or a club is the word of mouth. Someone giving a positive experience. And but as it turned out, almost all the newcomers that showed up at our meetings read about it in the local newspaper that comes out twice a week, and that has an organization listing that talks about what the different organizations are in town. Now, as was mentioned by John, I do teach a couple of computer classes at the Gila Community College, and over the years, I would really cajole my students and wanted to come join the club. And the last 2 secretaries actually were my former students. It's amazing what promising a good grade can accomplish. But here were the issues that we faced in 2016. And as I read these or talk about them, I'm sure there's going to be people listening that are going to say, wow, that's exactly what's going on with our club. So we had over 30 members for each of the last several years. Only a few of the officers came forward and volunteered to provide the presentations. I can't think of one time when there was a non-officer that actually did a presentation. It was either the officers or a webmaster. It was really limited, and I was always encouraging new members or others to do better, to do presentations, so we wouldn't have the same people all the time. Each November, we do our officer elections. In October, we come up with names, and in November, we look to vote on them for who will be the officer of the 4 positions. We had president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And every November, when the officer elections came around, no one was willing to volunteer to step up and take the place of someone who may have been doing this for years and really wanted to do something else. And I know that the officers who were with me for many years hoped this would be their final year. During the last few years, I would personally canvass members who I thought would be good at certain functions. You know, you can tell from the people in your clubs, and hey, this would be a good treasurer, or this would be a good secretary. But despite my cajoling, I had very few takers. So last October, for the first time, the club was faced with no one willing to run for the 3 out of the 4 officer positions. The vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer all came to me at different times, but within like a week's time, to tell me that this was going to be their last year. And there was no animosity. Nobody was mad at somebody else. These are individuals who worked full-time. They were perhaps well into their retirement years, a couple of them, and they just wanted to do something else. They wanted to focus their free time on other activities. Now, I had not told anybody this, but in my own mind, since I had been the vice president and then president For the last 10 years, my own plan was to announce that 2017 would be my last year as an officer of the club. I was happy to continue in the club, but it was time, I thought, for someone else to step up to the plate. I never got a chance to announce that. So, yes, many computer clubs around the nation are facing these same types of issues. What's the old axiom? 80% of the work is typically done by 20% of the people. And I'm telling you that 20% number is even less as it relates to computer clubs. And that's because, as I mentioned a moment ago, most members in clubs have reached a retirement age, and rightfully so, I think, in many cases. They feel they've paid their dues to society and would prefer to concentrate their free time on activities that are important to them other than the chores of being a club officer. And to me, what we really needed to make our club continue was to attract younger people. And I tried this in a number of ways and never really succeeded. And when you compare to 20 years ago, today's personal computers, they're simpler to use. We don't often see that blue screen of death anymore. So the computer clubs providing instruction to younger people are not as necessary as they once were. And then most people under 40 have grown up with PCs and computer products, and they take today's technology advancements for granted. Simply put, they don't see the need for a computer club. Now, how has this affected APCUG? Well, our membership, clubs members who are members of APCUG, has declined. As an example, in 2008, we had 276 member groups. But now for the year 2017, we're down to 157. That's basically 119 user groups, or about 13 clubs each year that have not renewed during this period of time. Now, not all of them have disbanded. There are a few clubs that have gotten to so small that they don't feel that the cost of renewing isn't within their budget. They've lost members, and they just feel they're too small. But the bottom line is each year, nationwide clubs close down due to not enough individual members volunteering to take on a more active role. And then those that are left to do it year after year after year, they become burned out. Now, this is true for large, well-established clubs too. And you could take a look at this and just type in the search engine, your favorite search engine on the internet and the World Wide Web, to find out about the Houston Area League of PC Users. They used to go by the name HAL, and they started back in 1982. At one point had 6,500 members. They closed up in 2014. So this doesn't affect just small clubs like the one in Payson. Big clubs can have this as an issue as well. So the main reason that groups have closed in the last several years, I'm going to summarize them now: lower attendance, lower participation by the individuals in running the club, and unable to attract younger members. And then another aspect, the downloading of free programs from the internet has replaced the need for software-related companies who used to provide free programs on disks. Some of you old-timers who have been with clubs for 20 years or more will remember when Microsoft used to give out their operating system on a disk to club members, and APCUG used to have many large software companies providing freebies of all kinds. Those days are long gone. And as I said again, to summarize it, the need to provide this information to members has diminished, just as this type of information is available on the World Wide Web and continues to expand. All right, so here's where the options we had for the Payson Club was to close down the club at the end of 2016. We have bylaws that state any amounts left in our bank account would go to the Payson Library. But one of the nice aspects we have, having been around as long as we have a grandfather clause that gives us the use of the community room at the library each month for a nominal amount that we pay yearly, whereas anybody now that's not grandfathered pays a lot more. So that's one aspect I really didn't want to lose. And then our club assets like the computer projector and maybe a few other things would need to be sold or donated. But the other option is to become what I'm calling a locally based meetup club. Now, let me first of all say that we're not confused. There is an organization, a national organization. You can look at their website. It's at meetup.com. And this is a national organization that facilitates group meetings in various large cities unified by a common interest. And if you go to their website, you'll see they have activities that range from photography to politics to shopping. It's the common bond that brings people together in a club atmosphere. The meetup club concept at meetup.com can handle that. But this works well for bringing together populations in large cities. And in fact, Bill James, my colleague, he's out of Oklahoma City. His club is actually working with meetup.com and has had good success so far. But it does not make sense for a community the size of Payson, which only has about 15,000 inhabitants. So here's how we set up the meetup for the Payson Computer Club. And to begin with, let me mention this is what we no longer have. We no longer have offices. There's a rotating leader at each monthly meeting, and that leader kind of keeps the meeting going in a certain direction, but no offices. No members, just attendees. So no formal membership list to keep, although we do have someone who has volunteered to maintain an email list and to send out notices when necessary. No agendas. I used to have to prepare an agenda every month for the general meeting. No dues to collect, keep a record of, deposit in the bank account. No meeting minutes to prepare. We used to do minutes at the end of our meeting so we could pass them around to those that were not able to attend. They'd have to be prepared, approved, and then either posted on the website, or at times we were sending them as email attachments. There's no requirements to update our website each month. Our website is changing to what's called a static website, where we'll just have information that says that when the club meets, what day of the week, at what time, and the location, and only when there's a special message will that be added to it. So the need of the job of our webmaster was greatly reduced. And let's continue. We no longer have requirements to change the monthly announcement in the local newspaper. What we used to say was, this month we're going to have this speaker or cover this aspect. We don't do that anymore. It's just, again, that static statement providing the day, time, and location. No more newsletter. Now, we did have a newsletter for about 2 years. The push articles from APCUG were extremely helpful in putting that together. And at one of the meetings with the person who did the newsletter in attendance, I made the mistake of asking a question that I did not know the answer to. Right? We're often told in certain situations in a large group, make sure you know the answer. Well, I didn't know the answer was going to be, when I asked for a show of hands as to how many folks were reading the newsletter, not one hand went up. So you can imagine that the person who was putting in all that time to put the newsletter together told me after the meeting that she was no longer going to do that. There are no bylaws spelling out the rules and regulations. Why? Because there are none. So here's how it works. Each month there is a leader. And this role rotates monthly. And the leader's main purpose is to, as I said a moment ago, to give direction during the meeting. The meeting includes the following segments. So we all come into the Payson Library. There's a large conference room with some tables and chairs around the room. We kind of take all the chairs and put them closer together and just sit and talk about computer aspects. But we try to do it in an organized way. And the first thing we do is called show and tell. Just like we all did in the 3rd and 4th grade, you get a new gadget. And you bring in the new gadget and demonstrate it. That's another word for show off. And you can show. So we've had, in my case, I brought in a new hybrid laptop that I picked up that has it's like the Surface tablets, but it's much, much less expensive, by ASUS, but it has the ability to do drawing and other things. So that was an interesting area. So I'm encouraging more and more people to bring in new gadgets that they got so they could talk about them. And then we have the question and answer segment. And again, we're in a large enough circle where everybody can hear each other and see each other, and we ask computer-related questions. Somebody may pop up and say, you know, what's new in the Creators update for the new Windows 10, or they maybe have had a problem with trying to load something. So hopefully someone in that group has the ability to provide the needed and correct response. We call it Help Me, Mr. Fix-It, and we actually encourage attendees to bring in equipment and devices they're having problems with to see if others can provide assistance. Now, so far no one has brought in a desktop, but when we talk about this, we're talking about really the ability to bring in a laptop, or maybe with phones. I mean, if somebody's having an issue with a smartphone, I've encouraged that to go along. We're not going to just be a computer club, but we're a technology club. So, and since more and more folks these days are using their smartphones for everything, that's certainly something we can help with. And then, of course, if there's the ability to have a presentation that they want to do on a topic of computer interest, definitely we'd like to see that happen. To me, one of the more important benefits of a meetup is that it provides something a YouTube video cannot offer. And I call it the in-person 3Ds, which are discussion of the item that we might be what's been brought up as to talk about in the meeting, to have a dialogue back and forth between our members, and to give actual demonstrations. Again, you're doing a YouTube video, which are great, but it's hard to ask a question. You might be able to type it in the area for the person who's presented it, but to give an answer, but who knows how long that takes. All right, so here's how we've done so far. A report card so far for 2017. The attendance has increased slightly, mainly due to an article I wrote at the beginning of the year for the local newspaper called the Payson Roundup, and I announced the new club structure. I'm pretty friendly with the editor of the paper, and I told them what we're going through, and said, rather than me doing a letter to the editor, how about if you do this as an article? And it wasn't a long article, maybe a quarter of the page, but it was one that many people were starting, had read, they've told me, and I think that was the best way to get the word out initially. The actual attendance number has been between 15 and 22, but the April meeting, I think for the first time, we had more women than men. And at the April meeting, a first-time attendee arrived, said she was new to the community, and currently, actually, her and her husband work in the technology field, and she wanted to know if she could help the club. Well, after I got up off the floor, because we don't often have brand new people walking in offering to help, I welcomed her, and she stayed for the whole meeting and really provided some wonderful input to some of the questions that were raised. So that had never happened before, somebody offering to help. The leader role, I was the leader at the first two meetings, and the first meeting, it doesn't really count as much. Bob G. from Avast was there. That was pre-planned for a while. And so that meeting wasn't really the true concept of the meetup. But after the that first meeting in January, the rest were. So after the one leader in our group arranged for the local computer repair facility, Smart Systems, is to send 2 technicians, and they spoke for about an hour on a variety of computer-related issues. That was a wonderful meeting and provided a lot of good information. Now, I've asked people in the past of our members to get up and talk a little bit and to discuss things, and they've never wanted to. But now, because there's no formal structure, and the couple of people who've now volunteered to be the leaders, they're very comfortable getting up and speaking to the group, because they know it's not anything that's formal. They can pretty much say whatever they need to say, because now they're the leader of the meeting and looking to provide the direction. The show and tell aspect. I was the only one to bring in a device. I brought in the Amazon Tap, which I have, and that new hybrid laptop. But at the last meeting, this was almost comical. One of the attendees got up and said, "Hey, I want to show you my new phone." And he took out what was basically a regular feature phone, not a smartphone. He called it a dumb phone. And while the technology was not exciting, this led to a wonderful and lengthy discussion on cell phones in general and the need for a smartphone and all the services that smartphones provide. So I was really happy to see the meeting take on kind of a direction of its own. We had the question and answer segment, and we kind of call that Ask the Experts, and that's in quotation marks, kind of comical because none of us really consider ourselves experts, but certainly like in any club, there are some people who know more than others. And we've already now talked about Windows 10, digital photography, IoT, the Internet of Things, and more. And once again, I've noticed that people who were members before and they were hesitant to ask these type of questions are now very comfortable participants. To help me, Mr. Fix-It, we have not used this yet, but I do envision attendees bringing in laptops and other smaller devices where there's software issues or just how do I use this, and we can demonstrate it not only for that person who brought it in, but for all the others who were there. Obviously, if it's a hardware issue that actually requires some type of physical repair, we're going to let that be handled by the professionals in our town who do that for a business. And then occasional presentations. So as I mentioned earlier, we had Bob G. from Avast and the Smart Systems technicians. And I spoke briefly at one of the meetings about what to expect from the Windows 10 Creators Update. This is a continuing story. It's not ending here. But these early results and the plan to continue our meetup concept for the remainder of 2017 for sure. You know, we're fortunate that we have money in the bank from our dues that were collected in previous years that allow us to continue our APCUG membership, because I can see increased use of the services like the Speakers Bureau and even the push articles. I'm going to have them sent to me, and then without the need of a formal newsletter, just be able to pass on those to the attendees. My strong inclination is that the Payson Area Computer Association will continue definitely for another year, and I think beyond, because in this much less structured manner, I think the enjoyment of the people attending is there, and there's no duties that are involved that are making the people, oh my God, I have to do the minutes or I have to do this. That's not there anymore. We just meet, talk about computer issues and device issues and technology in general, have a good time with the camaraderie of our neighbors, and feel the club is working better in this kind of manner. I'd really be proud if this experiment may become a model for other clubs around the country facing similar obstacles, and I'll certainly continue to provide information through the APCUG as to how we are doing here in the town of Payson, Arizona. So that is the end of my presentation now, but I'm happy to answer any questions that may have arisen.
Yeah, we've got a few that have popped up, and now that they know this is question and answer time, some more came up. You have not legally disbanded or dissolved your group then?
No, the bank account that we have some money in at the local bank is still in existence, so we didn't want to go changing that name. So the Payson Area Computer Association name is still in existence, but and some people still use that name. But to answer the question, no, we have not dissolved.
Were you a nonprofit organization?
No, we never filed that in that manner.
So you don't have to mess with that.
Right.
Somebody else wondered, now that you're not going to collect dues, and this question's half answered already, you know, how do you pay for your website, the newspaper notices, being a member of APCUG, and that sort of stuff?
Good. Well, we still have a fair amount of money in our bank account. The newspaper up here provides the information for free in their organization listing. Our webmaster has has purchased the domain name and has donated that to the club, so we have no expense there. Well, I forget what some of the other questions were.
You said you had money for the APCUG.
Right. We have money in the bank for that, so we can pay that, going down the road. Now, what will happen when the money is gone, and maybe in a few years, if we continue this road, then we might have to look at asking the people who are attendees, hey, we need $5 each or something to the club. I might volunteer the money. I mean, we'll cross that road when we come to it. But right now we are financially able, and that probably is one of the big benefits for us as opposed to other clubs that are facing similar situations that might not have the money in the bank.
Okay, because I know we have another group in Florida that has enough money that they don't charge dues because they've got enough in their bank to hold that off. Did you ever decide to just use like Zoom or Skype or Hangouts to meet online?
We've not done that because the community of Payson is really relatively small. You can get from one part of the town to the other in 15 minutes or less. I come from another community about 20 minutes away, but there would be the fact that we have the availability to use the local library. I don't see any necessity to try to do this with a Zoom or a Skype thing. Now, on the other hand, I do envision this year using APCUG's Speakers Bureau and encouraging and arranging for one or two meetings where if there's nothing actually planned and I'm the leader that night, I might use that, or if there's another leader, I'll encourage them, hey, here's the opportunity you can have, and get people from the Speakers Bureau to talk to us.
Okay, another person asked, and you kind of mentioned that you're coming from a different community. Was there nobody nearby that you could consolidate with? Another group that you could
Not really.
merge?
The two closest clubs, there's two clubs that are Arizona clubs that are. One is in Prescott, and Prescott would be about an hour and a half drive from here. And then the other club there's one down in Fountain Hills, and that's about 60 miles south of where we are. And so those are clubs that we could have, but again, it's not as convenient as having a club 15 minutes or less away.
Oh, good question. Are you required to have insurance coverage for your group meeting at the library?
No, we didn't have insurance before. We don't have insurance now.
Okay. One technical question. You keep referring to meetups, but you're not a part of the national meetups group, right?
Correct. That again, individuals listening can find out more. Their website is meetup.com, and as I said, Bill James and his Oklahoma City club have been using that for a while. That does cost money. I don't know exactly what the costs are. I'm going to probably think $50 or $60 a month to be a member, but you should go to their website to find out what they charge. But that, to me, will work in a large city where you have 100,000 plus people. I don't see it being the solution for a town like Payson, which has about 15,000.
Okay. One person wrote in that their club with a 55 plus retirement park, they've lost all their tech people. So all they have is the people who have the questions, and nobody has answers. A suggestion for how to cover that loss of the technical help?
Well, one of the things that we've done, I talked about, this is a entity known as Smart Systems, but there's other organizations and companies in town, and they've asked us, in fact, the Smart Systems folks, when can we speak to your group again? So if there's a company in the area that provides computer repair and computer service, they would normally love to address a group because they look at that as marketing. And when they're done with the presentation, they now have a new group of people who are going to come to them when they have a computer problem.
Okay. Somebody else asked, did you guys have like annual, our group that I'm a part of and others, well, we had a summer picnic and a winter, Christmas holiday potluck. Did you have those before?
Yes, we did just the Christmas party. We would have usually at the end of the year at a member's home. We would come together and we'd use some of the money that was in our account to have it catered. So when I say catered, I'm not talking about a fancy restaurant. We had the local high school that has a cooking, I don't know if it's a cooking class, what it's exactly called, but they provided the individual student to come and help with the meal and serve it. And so we were taking the money from our treasury, and instead of giving it to some company, we gave it back to the community through the high school.
Interesting. How about, do you have a Best Buy in your area?
Nope. The closest one is in Phoenix, 90 miles away.
So they're not going to come over and provide you with much support that far away.
Right.
Okay. Just trying to look. I think there's a lot of questions about what to do. People don't really want to disband, but there's a lot of work to it. Somebody has asked a couple different times, or a couple different people, about the requirements for APCUG membership, and I will just say that the advisors and the board of directors are reevaluating requirements for groups because of what's happening. And so there might be, not quoting me, that some changes, because some people have groups that aren't maybe going to meet the membership requirements, but I know that we are discussing what to do for smaller groups.
Right. I mean, and we, even though I call them attendees and they're not paying dues, these are individuals who regularly attend the meetups. So I consider them, for the purposes of APCUG, a member count. And then we do have our website. We've changed the domain name, and it's a different kind of information now. Before, it used to provide a lot of detail about previous meetings and minutes and things like that, and now it just really talks only about us, and if we have something special. Otherwise, it's just when our meetings are. But it is still a website, so that would still qualify as one of the requirements for APCUG membership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Well, we hope that this isn't a trend that's coming, but we want to thank Ray for somebody just popped in. What is your domain name?
I'm embarrassed to tell you right now. We just changed it, and I will. And I don't remember exactly what it is because I have it written down somewhere. I need to go into the UGLS and change that on our page.
Okay.
So,
I would suggest or offer to other people that my club has changed, and we are .club. That is one of the subdomains.
Yeah. I think now that you've said that, thank you so much, John. I believe ours is PaysonComputer.club.
And what my understanding is that way, when you do a Google search for clubs, then it makes it pop out faster. So, we've done that.
Yeah, if the person that posed that question wants to know, ask them, and if they can still see my APCUG email address, rbaxter@apcug.org. If they wanted to send me an email, and anybody else listening, I'll be happy to answer specific questions that way, and certainly we'll provide you the exact new domain name.
One person before I close it off asked, are you meeting in the daytime or in the evenings?
We meet on the fourth Monday of the month at 6:30 p.m.
Right there at that part of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another question for Judy to answer. All right, well, I thank you for sharing with us. We're sorry that that's happened to your club, but we know it's happening to other clubs. And there are alternatives to disbanding. Just to let you know that one of my clubs in my region meets every other month, puts a little bit stress on. And another club in my Michigan group meets like Ray's, more informally. And you know, they still have a website and they still have their regular meetings and stuff like that. If you have more questions, Ray Baxter at apcug.org.